And it is Thursday morning, the day after the Cubs victory here in the Midwest. And everybody in the Chicago region, and I think a third of the entire planet, because the Cubs are a popular team, are in an ecstatic state, which is not exactly what A Course in Miracles is aspiring to, but it's, one of those steps in the ladder of evolution, the upward evolution of consciousness. So the Cubs won, and that does mean there is a God in heaven. How are you this morning, Garrett?
I'm doing pretty good, Chris. Doing pretty good. I did stay up and caught the end of the game, so it was very exciting. Um, but yeah. I mean, I think it kind of we can have fun with the craziness, but then we can start to see that's not totally what it's about either. So yeah, it's an interesting world we live in.
It is, in fact, actually, all of these things. And, when you really watch people getting completely enthralled and wrapped up in sports activities and the arts and all of politics, all these different venues, it really is just a divertment, getting us away from what the real work is. But I think at times we need that. We need to take a break from our spiritual pursuit and just relax and allow the world around us to be, that sense of reward, that sense of, gee, this is really fantastic, but something greater awaits all of us. So it can be used in your own personal spiritual discipline as a nice little plateau to take a breather on.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's moving us towards this idea of the happy dream, where we're in the world, we enjoy the world, but we make the world less and less the cause of our happiness or the cause of our suffering. And there's probably a lot of Cleveland Indians fans today who aren't feeling so hot, and I think that it's interesting comment that I remember hearing that the happiness we feel when our team wins is actually not as intense as the sadness we feel when our team loses. And we talk a lot on these videos about how this is a dualistic world. And there was a point last night during the game where it kind of could have gone either way, and one group of people was going to be really happy and one group of people was really going to be sad. And and I would just kind of can watch that play out. And it does sometimes bring us to the question, what do I want to allow me to feel happy or sad? And maybe sporting events are things that we want to kind of have that effect on us. And I'm definitely right there with a lot of people in that boat. But at a certain point, we might say, I want to be happy regardless of what happens. I want to be happy no matter what, and that opens up a new possibility.
Exactly. It's very much in accordance with a lot of Buddhist philosophy, and of course, Course in Miracles has been acknowledged as being a Buddhist text about Christian and Christian values and the Christ consciousness. So it does kind of spill over in that concept of non-attachment and being able to look at duality without being seduced by the illusion of good and bad. And of course, as Jesus gave us the great example, be ye therefore in this world, but not of this world. Don't become anchored on phenomenon in this world that you think is going to make you happy, because the minute you do that, you're going to open the back door for the unhappy side of it to show up in your doorstep too.
Yeah, one of the the books I read that really kind of underlined that concept was Way of the Peaceful Warrior, where the character in the book, his goal was, I think, to make it to nationals in gymnastics. And, he worked really hard. He managed to achieve that. And then it was kind of like, then what? That the happiness lasted for a little while, but it faded, just like all the things in this world do. And then it was kind of like, oh, do I need to look for a higher goal? Do I need to climb a higher peak? Or maybe there's another way. And I think that was his entry into finding out that he wanted to find something within that was solid and steady. And that really fits really nicely to the section of the course that we're going to talk about today, which is the last section of the text in chapter 31, entitled Choose Once Again. Even the very title of this section is very illustrative of what this is all about. We choose the ego, we choose the ego, we choose the ego, and then we just choose once again. So there's a beautiful poem and song that has the words, though you've broken your vows 10,000 times, come, yet again come. And it says that we can't ever close the door on our ability to have peace. We may turn our back on it, but it's only ever a matter of us turning back in the direction of that love and choosing once again.
Yes, it is definitely a thing that is only defined by our desire. Do we desire peace, or do we desire to stay engaged and get into the darkness of having somebody else to blame? Because that really is the core of what the whole issue is. It has nothing to do with loving this or hating that. At the end of the day, it all reduces down to the fact that we do have this humanistic desire to have villains and to have heroes. And it's very easy to project that onto every aspect of our life. Politically right now, we have a lot of villains running around, and a lot of people are, trying to point out, well, this villain is actually a hero, and going the other way, that hero is actually a villain. So it becomes a thing of the realization as to what it is that really motivates us as we are moving through this material world. And the more you have that need to project your venom on, to vilify, and to wrestle to the ground and stomp dirt in their face, that's really the core element behind all of our decision making when we're sitting in that saddle riding the ego. So we really have to get clarity on what it is that motivates us.
Yeah, and this first paragraph here, right in this section, speaks to that so beautifully. It says, temptation has one lesson it would teach in all its forms, wherever it occurs. It would persuade the Holy Son of God he is a body, born in what must die, unable to escape its frailty, and bound by what it orders him to feel. It sets the limits on what he can do. Its power is the only strength he has. His grasp cannot exceed its tiny reach. And then he goes on to ask, would you be this if Christ appeared to you in all his glory, asking you but this? Choose once again if you would take your place among the saviors of the world, or would remain in hell and hold your brothers there. For he has come, and he is asking this. So this just really reinforces our decision right here in this now moment. And that's the only time we can really choose peace. And it's the only time we can choose something else. But it really clarifies that that is what is always here in this moment. Do I want to feel open and happy and joyful? Or is there something in me that is shying away from this, that wants something else?
Well, and we always know that there definitely is something that he's aspiring to in the ego's vision, much grander outcomes where evil is defeated, and all of the evil ones are brought to the cross to be crucified for, not necessarily for their sins, but for your sins. And that's the scary part of the whole drama. That's where it gets really and over the last 2 years, I would say, I have had a lot of activity at night in my dream experiences. And a couple of days ago, I had a dream where I was hanging out with Harrison Ford, and we were chumming it up and having a great discussion. And in the dream, I was thinking, wow, I've got to get back to the house and tell the kids about, spending the night with Harrison Ford talking about all these interesting things. And then the next part of the dream moved me in the direction of going to pick up my car so I could drive home. And somebody had broken into my car and taken something out of it. And I found the person who had broken into the car, and I was really confrontational, and there was all this anger and screaming and hysteria. And for the first couple of seconds after I awoke from that dream, I was still feeling all that anger. And then I thought, good God, what a beautiful example this is of the whole condition here on planet Earth. It is a dream. It seems incredibly real. But as we start to awaken, we begin to realize, oh, there's no need for me to hate this person or to attack this person or to justify action because I was violated, I was damaged or hurt. So life parallels, or offers us parallels as to what truth and reality actually are if we are paying attention, and those things do come up over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's such a great example, to get to see that, the anger still kind of carries on from the dream, but then you really get, oh wait, nothing happened, and just watching that emotion melt away. And we have the same dynamic here as we're going through the circumstances in our dream life, and we think that it really matters so much, but then we start to get that there's really been no effect. The separation has not in truth caused anything, because it is not in itself a cause. So it couldn't actually lead to anything because it's not true in itself. How could something with a non-existent foundation be built upon? And ultimately, that's what we're coming to see, is that all of the ego's toys, all of the things like fear, greed, sin, fear, and guilt, I think I said fear twice, all of them are built on an empty foundation. And that it's by coming to see that it doesn't rest on anything that we see that there's nothing to it. But that's usually kind of a long process, because we are so invested in our things. There's another quote a little farther down in paragraph 4. He says, "The images you make cannot prevail against what God himself would have you be. Be never fearful of temptation then, but see it as it is, another chance to choose again, and let Christ's strength prevail in every circumstance, in every place you raised an image of yourself before." So we just really keep working on this. We keep seeing the ways that we kind of fall. We mistake something in this world as important and as truly affecting us. And then when we see that that's not the case, then we just sort of unplug from it and we step back and we say, okay, Jesus, help me see this with your eyes, because I know that I don't have to be fearful here, and you'll show me how to do that.
Yes, and this also raises another very interesting thought to contemplation, which is the whole idea of if I am going to live a spiritual life, I have to avoid all these confrontational things, because here we are given the assurance that avoidance is not the way to resolve these things. This is not the answer. And one of the stories in the Bible that is very engaging is when Jesus goes out into the desert and deals with temptation. And in that final state, the devil, which we would interpret as the ego, takes him up to this high place and gives him a vision where he can see all the world around him. And the devil is saying, I will give you dominion over all of this. And Jesus recognizes, how in truth, that would drag you down to the point of being a victim of all this. You become the dust and the dirt and the winds of change. So avoiding all of these situations in life that are uncomfortable really is not in your best interest. It's like a muscle. You have to exercise the muscle in order to gain bulk and strength. And that's the same thing that happens within our spiritual practice. And in that same section, it goes on to say, learn then the happy habit of response to all temptation, to perceive yourself as weak and miserable with these words. I am as God created me. His son can suffer nothing, and I am his son. And wow, is that ever a powerful escape clause from, the darkness of being a Cleveland Indians fan?
They were so close too.
Yeah, it was one of those real cliffhangers in the most literal sense. I mean, it was like, which side of the fence is the egg going to fall on?
Yeah, and we all have our own version of being, an Indians fan. We all have ways that this world feels hard or tough. And one of the things I think is really nice about the message of the Course is that he tells us that this world is not our home, that we are an alien here, that we don't belong here. And in different ways, I think we can all feel that in different things that unfold in our life. I think the reason that that's good news is because without knowing that this world isn't real, we keep searching here for something that's going to bring us this happiness. And even the best things here are only temporary. Even the best connection you might have with another person at some point is going to end. And even the happiest outcome on the level of form will at some point change. And the question is that, is that stable? And the answer is no, it's not really something that we can feel solid and grounded on. And that's why Jesus has us build our house upon the rock, that rock of truth, that rock of spirit, that rock of faith, and that will always bring us what we truly want, not just what we think we want.
Yes. And one of the things I love about the nature of the Course is it is very inclusive of life, all forms, manifestations of life. And when we go down to the 6th section here, it says, you are as God created you, and so is every living thing you look upon, regardless of the images you see. What you behold as sickness and as pain, as weakness and as suffering and as loss, is but to temptation to perceive yourself defenseless and in hell. So when we are drawn into these causes of, champion pit bulls and champion whales, and throwing ourselves in front of armed opponents to our belief systems about clean water and all these different things that cause a diversion, that cause us to get attached to the material world, we really have to draw back and say, no, God is the protector of life. God is the source of life. And life itself is not bound by matter. It is not bound by this material world. And once we can start to withdraw ourselves from getting inflamed by the madness and the ugliness of this world, then, the whole life takes on a different texture and gives us so many different options than we can even begin to imagine in our present state.
Yeah, when we remove the burdensome veils of guilt and shame that we've placed upon the things in our world, then we can interact with them without a sense of heaviness or burden or challenge. They just become like objects in a dream, where we can interact with them knowing, oh, there's really nothing heavy to this. And that's really how we want to be. I think as you were continuing here a little further in this paragraph, it says, a miracle has come to heal God's Son and close the door upon his dreams of weakness, opening the way to his salvation and release. Choose once again what you would have him be, remembering that every choice you make establishes your own identity, as you will see it and believe it is. So not only are we feeling less upset when we don't believe the sinful projections of our guilt and shame, but we actually feel better ourselves, because as we see our brother, so we see ourselves. So when we see the Christ in another, then we start to see it in ourselves more and more. And that's one of the real payoffs of the spiritual course, is to see the truth inside of ourselves by seeing it in everyone we meet.
Exactly. And in everything we meet, because even though we like to believe in that conceived discernment between, or distinction between, man and animal and plant, the reality is that life is life. It is from the one source, and it is the one light. So it really levels the field for us in a lot of ways. It gets us beyond this idea of distinctions. And I think that's one of the things that is very difficult as we're working through the course, is seeing other people as being more evolved, or having more, or being more. And we have all these different levels that we are looking at as being representative of life. And we sort them out. Oh, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a ficus tree, and here are two humans standing here. But the truth is that all life is the one life. And once you actually start to incorporate that in your thinking process, then you see the sanctity, the beauty, and the joy of how God expresses life in every conceivable possibility, every conceivable potential.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it really points to the fact that life is everywhere. There's nowhere that God is not. There's no time that God is not. And that's really true, because there is no place and there is no time. God is infinite. God is immortal. And when we start to get these ideas and start to actually get that we are one with God, we start to realize that that is our truth as well. And it can be a little fearful as we let go of our small self-concept, but ultimately it's extremely liberating and extremely freeing. Yeah, and I think just to kind of, well, I guess maybe there's quite a bit here. Maybe we can can keep going on this section for another week and do some more reading on it, because it is such a beautiful section.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And when you made that mention of there is no place where God is not, that actually was one of Mary Baker Eddy's statements. And we all know that Helen Schucman was a student of a lot of Mary Baker Eddy's teachings and writings before she actually became the scribe of A Course in Miracles. But Mary Baker Eddy said, there is no spot where God is not. And that's perhaps a good thought for us to wind it up for today and invite people who are checking in on the video theme here. Sunday in ALSIP, we will be doing another Step into the Light, which is a conversation with participation by everyone attending about A Course in Miracles. So come down, join us, and we'll be studying the Course in Miracles collectively.
Yeah, it'll be great to have you there. It's 1 p.m. at Transformation in ALSIP, and yeah, we're gonna explore and have some fun as we talk about A Course.
I think that would be grand. And in the meantime, we have to spend a little time helping the rest of Chicago sober up after a wild and drunken night of revelry.
Sounds good. All right, I'll start brewing the coffee.
Sounds great. I'll see you in a week. Or actually, I'll see you in a few days.
All right, looking forward to it.
Take care.
Bye, Chris.